mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast.
I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
I'm your host, Katie Burke.
I'm your host, Dr. Jared Henson. And I'm your host, Matt Harrison.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harrison, and today we have with us very special guest, Mr. Fred Zink. Mr. Fred, how's it going?
Good, doing well.
Man, it is
I reverse migrated. Usually when I come south, I got a fishing pole or a shotgun.
Yeah.
I just have my little carry-on. It's felt odd.
Oh yeah, we're in the middle of March here, and it's time to chase a turkey down this way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you do much turkey hunting?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I think I got maybe 7 states this year, something like that.
Oh, wow.
About 7. I think so. Yeah.
Wow. So you're going to do some traveling with it.
Oh, yeah. I shot my first turkey when I was 15.
Wow.
I've been after it for a while. I got 39 years I've been chasing turkeys. Yeah.
Same for ducks?
No, I got more time on the ducks.
Wow.
Yeah, I killed my first duck when I was 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
I've been after it for a minute.
Well, most of our viewers and most of our listeners know the name Fred Zink, whether they've blown a duck call, whether they've watched DUTV, whether they've AVNX, whatever it might be, they have came across Fred Zink's name at some point. But I want you to give our listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got started.
Well, I got started. People say, did you grow up in a family that hunted? Yeah, for sure. Fish, yeah, for sure. I can't remember not hunting. Like, I grew up, I was in the Rocky Mountains in elk camp when I was 3 years old with my dad. And I just grew up hunting, fishing. That's what I did. You know, in the summertime, I had a fishing pole or a BB gun in my hand every day. I was a farm boy, grew up on a farm. And my dad was a very, very passionate hunter. And later in the year after he retired, he worked till he's about 75.
Wow.
But in the wintertime, he did excavating. So in the wintertime in northern Ohio, it's hard to move dirt, right? And so he goose hunt every day, duck and goose hunt, deer hunt, whatever. But my dad grew up, in northern Indiana, and actually hunted not for a living, hunted to eat, right?
Yeah.
Straight, honest. And so I grew up with that culture. And that culture is what you shoot, you eat. You shoot anything you want, but you got to eat it, right? And so I just always grew up hunting. And I grew up on the farm and worked in the summer for him and hunted. So I shot my first duck when I was 9 and fell in love with it right away. Just the ability to communicate with a bird through calling. Calling was my first passion. My second passion was decoying.
Yeah.
The third passion was hiding from them. So it was just like boom, boom, boom. Summertime, I grew up, we had horses. I grew up on a horse farm. We had about anywhere from 10 to 15, 20 head of horses.
Oh, wow.
And so I grew up and we farmed alfalfa and Timothy hay. So we had plenty of pheasants, plenty of rabbits and around. And when we take our hay off, we had blackbirds everywhere. And so I made at one time, I probably had 300 blackbird silhouettes I made. And so I'd set big spread of blackbird decoys and I'd shoot them with a BB gun. And that's what I did in the summertime. I was, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. So I just grew up with a passion of decoying. It's like, that's the beauty part of, we just talked about before we got started here, turkey hunting.
Yeah.
I love to decoy a turkey just like I do a waterfowl. And I like there's something about when you communicating through calling, through decoying, and then hide to where you're right there and they have no idea you're there. And when you can fool one of God's creations, the thinking that you're them, through calling and a
That's a
decoy
good
and a
feeling.
hide. And the one thing about decoying is you get them close, and you see things that you never would see if you didn't do that. You know, say you go out past shooting ducks. That's fun. Whatever. It's a skill.
Yeah.
Because it's a shooting skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't have the skill of calling and making the blind and scouting the right spot and setting the decoys right and picking the right decoys and all that. Where that decoying, and the same way with turkey, man, getting a turkey 5 yards, 10 yards away.
There's nothing like
and
it.
he's got no idea you're there.
There is nothing like
Oh,
it.
it's awesome. It's awesome. So I got started doing that. Shot my first duck, blue-winged teal, when I was 9.
Tell us that story.
Well, we were hunting public land on a little lake in Ohio, central Ohio, on the western side called Indian Lake. And we would go to the blind drawings. It'd be my cousin, my uncle, my dad. It'd be 8, 10 of us go there, and you put your name in, boom, you get drawed out, and then you go into the state office, and they might be 25, 30 blinds on a lake, right?
Wow.
And you get first pick, second pick, third pick. So you go in there, say, I drew number 5.
You got the 5th pick.
Yeah, I go in there, and you go in there and look and say what's available, you know, and then you pick your blind, and you have a stake, and then you go out there and you build you a blind and camouflage, and that's your blind for the year, you know, on public water. So that's what happened, and we had a little blind set up on the Indian Lake, and I remember bird come in and landed. I shot him right on the water, you know, and double barrel Fox 20 gauge, and let him have it right there about 12 yards. That was my first introduction to. Before I'd go with my BB gun, but that was the first time I went and I could let the fire fly. Oh yeah, heck yeah,
that's awesome.
And I grew up. You know, I've had a lab since I can remember. Always had bird dogs. My dad had bird dogs. We pheasant hunted, had Brittany's, and we had pointers and Vizslas, and so I grew up. We'd travel to the Midwest pheasant hunting all the time. We'd go quail hunting, grouse hunting. I've hunted about anything that could swim, fly, crawl, whatever, right? And so we just grew up and doing that. So that was I was born in 70. So 1979, I shot my first duck. And I just got into this passion about that's all I wanted to do. My dad was, to be honest with you, my dad was a bird hunter at that point. He was a pheasant hunter. And we go to Kansas, we go all over. At that time, we had a lot of birds. In 78, 79, we had a blizzard come through the Midwest, hit Ohio. And a population of pheasants and quail almost was basically eliminated.
Are you serious?
No, just totally wiped out. State tried to restock them, whatever. It just never took off again. We went from, you know, I could walk out my back door with my dad and, you know, we'd go hunt for an hour, come back, we'd have, you know, 6, 7 pheasants, 8 or 10 quail, a couple rabbits, whatever, right? And so this duck hunting just grabbed a hold of me. My dad loved it. We started traveling. I started going to Kansas. We go out every Thanksgiving, a break. We go to Kansas and hunt public water out there. Glen Elder, Lake Wakanda, which is north central Kansas up there on the border. And we go there with my uncle, my cousin, some of my friends that I went to school with, and we go there every year at Thanksgiving and hunt. And I was talking to my uncle one time. My uncle was kind of the caller of the bunch, right? Steve Zink's his name, and he was the guy running the show as far as calling and doing all that stuff. And I just was infatuated with it. And it was a little magazine, well, it was a newspaper in those days called Wing Supply.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right,
I'm familiar.
I was checking you out.
I was born.
Little yellow newspaper show up. I couldn't wait to get it. And I'd work for my dad baling hay all summer long, and I'd spend my money. And I got trash bags full of calls, you know, Lomans and Haydels and a bunch of old olds and stuff like that. And so every time a new call would come out, I would buy it.
Had to have it.
I had to have it because we're looking for the next mousetrap. And so I started talking to my uncle one time. We were in a blind. And I said, man, I want to get in a calling contest because I was infatuated with it, right? And at that time, Nightingale had released a call called the Double Cluck. Double Cluck Plus, and I was pretty fair at blowing it, right? And he goes, "Oh, I seen some little kids on TV. You know, they ain't no way you can do it. You know." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm telling you, these kids are good." And blah 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 blah. I was like, "You know, I'm gonna go try it." Well, he was right. My dad, we drove. Where the heck we go? Oh, I was telling you, I met Jimbo. So this is man, how old was I? It was about 88. I was probably a senior in high school.
Wow.
1988. We went to Rock Island, Davenport, Moline. What's called the triple header back in the day. It was 3 regionals, and we went there. And I was blowing a Rich and Tone. I had bought a Coca-Cola Rich and Tone cigarette duck call. And I went out there and blew in the duck call. I got my butt kicked pretty good. Didn't even have a chance, but didn't know, right? And so the first 2 contests, I think I didn't even make the second round. First round cut. The third one, through the process of elimination, two guys not showing up because they'd already won. I think I made the second cut barely. It probably just barely made it. But I'd met some very, very cool people there that ended up, one of them, Barney Califf, 3-time world champion duck caller.
Wow.
Right? Scott Carlson, Jim James, world champion duck caller, Buck Gardner, okay, Bernie Boyle, a bunch of past world champion top shelf callers were there because it was like, I don't know, man, it was like 40, 45 people in these regionals,
wow.
right? So that was about 88 or 89. And then I went to the Cornhusker Regional. And at that point, I was blowing a Carlson call. It was Wendell Carlson, made in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Met Jimbo Ronquist.
Yeah.
He was blowing a Rich and Tone, a White McCarter Rich and Tone at that point. He wasn't sponsored by Rich and Tone. We kind of got in at about the same time. And then in 1989, in the summer, we used to fish for salmon up on Lake Michigan. And I was in a sporting goods store, and there's a little paper there lay on the desk that said U.S. Open Goose Calling Contest, Michigan City, Indiana. And it was about 30 minutes from where we had our boat. So I told my dad, I said, next weekend on Saturday, when we get done fishing, I want to go to this goose calling contest. So we went there. We met Tim Grounds, Sean Mann, Keith McGowan, Randy Bartz, Al Dagger. Like, we met the cream
legends,
of the cream.
yeah.
Adam Rametta, Brian Sullivan, everybody. There was like, I don't know, there's like 10 or 12 world champions represented there. And I didn't go there to compete. I went there to listen. And trust me, I was like blown away with what these guys could do, And I met Grounds, bought some goose calls from him, and I bought some extra ones so I could start selling with my buddy. So I bought, I think, like a dozen goose calls. And that's how I got started. Grounds took me under his wing. And then I started competing in duck calling and goose calling contests. That would have been 89 I met him. And I think I won I think it was 90 or 91. I think it was 90. The next fall, I won the state goose calling championship. And then I started winning duck calling contests to compete at the World. I think it was in 92. Times run together. I was like 92 was the first time I competed at the World. I got third runner up. Yeah, I think it was 92. And then 93, I got second runner up. In 94, I realized at that point that duck calling wasn't my game. Like, I was obviously competitive, but it wasn't what competitive duck calling was so far away from duck hunting.
Yeah, correct.
That I felt like I was almost getting worse as a duck hunter or duck
trying
caller.
to become a better
contest caller. And the other thing that I didn't like about the duck calling is once you won, you were done for the year until the World. It's called getting your ticket. You qualify, you can't compete no more, right? And so it wasn't fun. When I was going for 2 or 3 years and I couldn't win, it was fun because I could go every weekend, 6-7 times a year, whatever it was, and get to see all my friends and people or whatever. And then when you won, you just sit at home. I kept getting all these flyers in the mail about these goose calling contests, right? I was like, man, I'm going to lean in on that because competitive goose calling and calling geese, very similar. Same notes, same quality of sound, same everything. And so my dad was my biggest fan. He took me around everywhere. Everywhere I went, my dad went, right? And so he'd drive me around. And so Grounds took me under his wing, and I started competing in that, and that was my natural talent. Like, every time I practice, and I practice every day. Every day I practice, he's like, I just figured out one note I couldn't do the day before, or I could do it better, or I come a new sound, new rhythm, new something. So I started competing pretty heavy about 92 or 93, somewhere in there with goose calling. And I just had, I was from Ohio. There were no other good goose callers or duck callers from Ohio. I just thank God I had, number one, I had met the right people. Number two, I had talent. Number three, I had a work ethic. And that's about the time when VHS tapes come out. And so started competing in calling contests, and I went on a pretty good tear. I won a lot of calling contests, and one year I won over $50,000, by like $55,000.
Wow.
Blowing a goose call. And I worked for my dad doing excavating. We did commercial development, stuff like that. So on the weekend I do that. I met my wife about 92 or 93, about the same time. She started traveling with me, and long story short, we started a little company called Zink Outdoors in 98. And it was a mail order catalog, and I was selling mossy oak camouflage. I was selling duck commander duck calls, pattern master. I was selling outlaw and final approach blinds. And we go to all these shows. You know, one of my first employees was Jeff Foyles.
Wow.
Yep. As far as Zink Outdoors goes. And then I had met Ron Latchall and was a part owner of a certain part of Final Approach for a while. And so we were traveling over. And then I was also a freelance videographer for Mossy Oak.
Wow.
And so I was behind the camera and in front of the camera as well. And we were filming Whistling Wings stuff. Right. And so a lot of the first Whistling Wings videos, I filmed a majority of the footage either in front of the camera or behind the camera, one of the two. So I had this thing going. It was my sideline deal. And long story short, I wanted to be a full-time at it. I did like doing the excavating, but, you know, working with your dad, it can always be tough, right? So long story short, fast forward, in 2001, or 2000, I started Zink Calls. And so it was out of necessity from the standpoint of nonstop people calling me and go, hey, I know you sell grounds calls and duck commander or whatever, but you ever thought about, I want to buy a call with your name on it? It's like, well, I don't make them. Well, after about 300 phone calls, you know, I'm like, man, maybe I should make it. So I called Grounds up. We talked about it. I wanted to go work for him. That's what I wanted to do. And long story short, didn't work out. He wanted to keep it small. And, you know, I totally get it. And so I started Zink Call in the spring of 2000. My very, very first show I ever went to was the DU Festival.
No way.
Right here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
That was in May of 2000. And I showed up and sold every duck call I made during that deal. Yeah. And then about later that year, I think it would have been, I don't know, July, August, I started making goose calls or whatever. But I sold everything. I think we made a total of 350 calls that year, and we sold them in a blink of an eye. I'm like, wow, this is like really good, you know. Selling goose calls for $150 and duck calls for $125 on the side.
Yeah.
You know, and there wasn't no credit card then. It was cash. You know, she sent some cash in or whatever, right? And so it was pretty good. And then in 2000, in that same time that I come here to Memphis, I had designed and developed a blind that later became the finisher blind, okay, the Avery finisher. And I had went, a good friend of mine knew Tom Matthews and Alan Hughes at Avery and said, hey, I got some guys I'd like to introduce you to and show you that blind. So I went there, showed them the blind. They're like, holy crap, we've been trying to figure out how to make a lay-down blind that would fold up like that. That's it. Would you be interested in licensing again? I'm like, I don't know what that means, but probably. If that means I can make some money.
Can I make $1?
Yeah, I'm in, right? And so long story short, we met with a rep group. Everybody loved it. And so we started making the samples, and it was ready to go in 2001. It was about June or July because I was on a job site. We were doing a big Christian school development where we did the school, we did the playground, we were doing all the stuff, moving all the dirt. And long story short, they called and said, hey, man, Matthews called me and goes, hey, man, we're having, I get a page. That was on pager. I get a page. It was, I remember his number today. It was 901-409-7734. Okay. And I look down and go, all right, boom, go get the phone was in a bag in the truck, work truck. Go over there. Hey, what's going on? Hey, they can't make these blinds. They don't know what's going on, whatever. We're going to have to cancel these things and what's we can fix them. I was like, where are they making them? Well, they're making them in China. I was like, I ain't never been there. He goes, me neither. I said, I'll go. He's like, what? You'll go to China? I was like, yeah, because this is like my dream. Yeah. So he's like, all right, let me find out what you got to have. Well, you got to have a passport and you got to have a visa and all that stuff. He said, we'll start working on the visa, but you got to go get a passport. So I went and got it. 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane. He said, hey, you got to meet this guy named Stuart at LAX. You'll know who he is. Dog blind. He got blonde hair. Looks like a spinner bait. He's going to be wearing a bright Hawaiian shirt. I'm like, really? He goes, yep, that's what he's going to look like. So I'm going there. I looked up and I said, you must be Stuart. And he goes, yes, sir. You're Fred? Yep. We got on a plane, went to China.
No
I was there
way.
for 5 days. We got it all figured out. They didn't quite understand what we're trying to accomplish. So that's how I got into the industry. And then basically a year later, 2002, I went to work full time. I quit my family business. I told my dad, I was like, I want to go pursue and my dad was upset, but very supportive because he knew that was my passion and love, and I had a little something talent wise to be able to innovate and design, develop products. So long story short, he backed me on the deal, and I went to work for Avery in the spring of 2000, like May or June of 2000. And then at that point, then we started making, tons of different products.
Oh, yeah.
And I was the foundation of Green Headgear, did a lot of carving. It was my baby. I spent over 700 days overseas developing and working on products and stuff like that in Asia. So that got me going. And meanwhile, I had Zink calls going. My wife pretty much ran it. And the dates might be a little off here, but I think about 2003, my very first full-time employee was Fuel Hudnall, which somebody passed
No
on
way.
to you. Yeah. He was my very first employee. My second employee was his brother, Clay. And so they worked for Zink calls, and they would make calls. I'd do my excavating deal. I still did excavating at that point, I was at Avery. But they would do all that work and do all that stuff. And then I'd come home when I get done with Avery. I'd work there at night or whatever. So we kind of paralleled, and that's how I got in the industry.
That's unbelievable.
Doing Avery, Green Headgear, Zink calls, and then in 2009, I resigned from Avery. November 2009, I took about. It's kind of weird. People talk about, hey, I want to start my own business. I want to make a bunch of money. I want to do what you did and all this stuff. But I never took a check out of the Zink calls personally until 2009.
Wow.
So I started in 2000, never took a check out of it until 2009. It wasn't because it wasn't a successful business. I just put my money back in. My wife worked for it, right? I just put my money back in growing the company, right?
Wow.
So 2009, I resigned. I took about 6 to 8 months off. And I didn't know what I was just like, man, I want to concentrate on Zink calls. And I need a little bit, because I had been gone on the road nonstop during that whole period of time. And I was like, man, I've learned so much. I got so many connections overseas. I know a lot about building product and decoys. So then I started AVNX 2010, and I shipped our first product in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it what you thought it would be like at this point? Or is it bigger?
It's still almost like a dream,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't set an alarm clock to get up. Now, if I got to get on an airplane at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning or something important, I'll set my alarm clock. But I haven't set my alarm clock in probably 20 years. Wow. I just get up.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I just get up. No need to, but I get up because I want to get up, right?
But it's like you said too. I mean, you spent how many days? Over 700 days.
700 days,
overseas.
yeah,
I mean, you put in the time, and that's what me and Doug talked about. Is to be in the positions that y'all are in is. You hear a lot of times a lot of people say, man, you're so lucky. You're so lucky that and you're like, do you know what?
You know what the definition of luck?
Yeah.
You know what it is? Is when a hard work and opportunity meet.
Yep.
Right? And you can't have one without the other.
You can't.
No.
And
luck is winning the lottery.
Correct.
Being successful doesn't have anything to do with luck. No.
Exactly. But that, people don't understand that. They just, man, you're so lucky to be in the position you are.
Yeah, a lot of people, they get lucky enough to be in the right opportunity, but they didn't have either preparation or the hard work or that work ethic in front of it to take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving us
What about you?
Well,
give me your little story now.
Well, my story's not nearly as cool as yours.
Well, that's because you're young. You got some time.
Yeah. No, so I told this briefly to Doug. I didn't go into major detail, but I kind of got my start.
I know you played college ball.
I did. Played college baseball.
You're an infielder or what?
I was actually a pitcher.
You're
I was a pitcher only. My dad.
You're right-handed?
Right-handed.
Guy,
yep.
you got your hair. I was a catcher, so you got your hat on straight. I knew you was not a left-hander.
Yeah, exactly.
Lefties
if I had
are always like that.
Had it cocked to the side a little bit. That's that southpaw, ain't it?
Yeah.
But no, so our dad played professional baseball for 8 years in the Oakland Athletics organization. He was drafted 6th round out of high school.
Really
Phenomenal athlete. Way better than me and my brother were. He was a dual sport athlete, quarterback, had chances to play at Southern Miss and also Ole Miss.
That's awesome.
Great athlete. So we naturally,
well, you come from that work ethic, though. You were raised with that work ethic.
100%.
Because if he made it that far,
He did, and we were taught at a very young age, whatever you start, you finish. There's no quitting.
No matter what.
No matter what. My mom always taught us,
that's why a lot of people, they quit. They make a bad decision, all right, and halfway through they quit.
Yep.
Well, if you follow that dream or that decision all the way through, sometimes that decision you thought was bad becomes good.
Correct.
And number two, you learn exactly why that was a bad decision. Yep. If you quit halfway through, you lose the bad decision knowledge.
Exactly.
You got to follow it
and
through.
That's what our parents, they said, if you decide to quit something, you're going to finish whatever it is you're doing. If it's you don't want to return to play baseball your next year, you're going to finish out your year, and then we can assess the situation after. But you're not quitting anything. You start what you finish. And my mom always taught me, if somebody hires you, being an employee that you would want to hire if you're the boss. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. Like,
be the solution, not the problem.
Exactly. And so we played college baseball growing up, me and my brother both. We loved it, but we always loved the outdoors. Our dad didn't hunt though, but our Papaw did, and he was a huge deer hunter. And every weekend we were homeschooled, so just about every weekend we would spend time with him. Well, anyway, we came across, of course, and this is going to sound, like, oh, we were one of those, but we came across an old Duck Commander video, and we actually got to meet. This was actually before Duck Dynasty. It was old Duck Commander.
I used to sell those videos. I know. Oh yeah. So him and Coco, I know the Robinsons since the mid '90s.
Yeah.
Because we go to places and Phil would be doing a seminar and I'd be doing a seminar. We'd be doing Cabela's Grand Opening, Shields, Gander Mountains, wherever, right? And so I've known Phil forever. So when I started the catalog, one of the first people I called was
Phil.
Yeah, it was Phil. Well,
wow.
Well, yeah, it was Miss K.
Or Miss K,
Miss K's the one that answers the phone.
CEO.
Her or Lisa. Trust me when I tell you. Yeah, that's who run that deal. And so, that background, when I was a kid, I grew up, not a kid at that point, is when they released Duckman 1. I used to watch it nonstop. And him and Coco. And
so before they actually became, Duck Dynasty come out and all that, it was actually Willie and Jace went to a Mississippi Braves game, which is the used to be the AA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves, and they were there signing autographs, posters. Right. Willie and Jace. I mean, there wasn't even hardly anybody in line, So we went up, saw him, got the autograph, and me and my brother were like, man, we really want to try the duck hunt thing. And I was 12 years old, and he was like 15. And so anyway, we were like, where do we even go?
How old are you?
I'm 26.
26, young pup. My son's 25, so I'm starting to frame it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Young, for sure.
You were born in 99 then.
98. But
98, okay.
Yep. But anyway, so we're talking to this guy. He was like, man, I deer hunt this certain area on this river. And he said, every morning there is so many wood ducks, I can't even hardly get in my stand. And we were like, where's it at? He's like, man, it's over here on the Leaf River. And we said, we're going.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we went. We jump shot and walked the Leaf River shooting ducks, and then eventually started hunting some WMAs in Mississippi. Then my brother got a scholarship to play in Arkansas, in Monticello, Arkansas. UAM is the university there, so he went and played there. And then he ended up becoming a headland manager there for an unbelievable place, managed down there. And then we kind of got that Arkansas taste of like, man, this is what it's like.
So where you were born and raised then?
McGee, Mississippi. So just south of Jackson, Mississippi.
Well, it's good to hear the story. I mean, I follow you on Instagram and the podcast and stuff like that. So it's good to hear your story as well.
No doubt. But it's been fun. But like you said, hard work is what gets you to where you're at and taking every opportunity that you can.
100%.
But now I want to talk a little bit more about the hunting side of things. And we've talked a little bit about your story and stuff, but you've been all over chasing waterfowl.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how many states out of the 50 you've been to? Have you counted?
No.
No?
No.
I wonder how many it is.
I don't know. I've been to every state. It's been good.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool though, just to kind of hear, I don't mean this in an ugly way, but an original, somebody that's older now, and I don't mean that ugly. You're still not old, but somebody that's kind of paved the way, because I told you this earlier, and I'm not just saying it because we're on the podcast or live, but one of my first ever duck calls was the Power Hen 2.
Yeah.
And,
we
it
sold
was
thousands of
it
those.
was one of my literally staple pieces in my waterfowl, and,
many, many people.
Yeah. And so it's just been cool to kind of sit here and talk with you. But I want you to tell us some of your hunting stories, because that is some of my favorite things to talk about to people that have been around in a long time. So what are some of your most memorable hunts, like some of the craziest encounters you've had? What are let's start off with this.
I got a lot, but I'll keep it short.
What is the best hunt that you've ever been on?
Man, it's hard to define best because I got so many hunts with my family, my dad, right? People like, I traveled around a long time with Tim Grounds.
Wow.
And then, of course, my kids. I've seen so many different things. So this is just a little snapshot. This is, man, I got to see a lot of places that were really good before they got ruined by overhunting or, over promoted or over cell phone, where people know what's going on now, So we were in Oklahoma hunting. We were hunting with a regional guy, and I think it was a state representative for Oklahoma, and we were down there hunting. And my son Gunner, I said, he's 25, so he's about the same make as you. And we were down there. I'd say Gunner was probably, he was young. I'd say about 12 to 14. I'd say somewhere in there. Let's call him 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that much. And we're down there, and we're wearing them out. Right, we're hunting. We're on the edge of this little wheat field, and we're shooting specks, lessers, and snows, Roskies, blues. I mean, we're putting it on them. Right, it's a great hunt. And the guys from Ducks Unlimited sitting right next to Gunner. I'm here. Gunner's to my left, and then the other two fellas right there on the left side. And they go, Gunner, this is an incredible hunt. We've been hunting all our life. This is the best hunt we've ever been on. How about you? This has got to be incredible. You said, Mister, you should have been here yesterday. He goes, why? He goes, this ain't nothing. You should have seen it yesterday. So just
Did
that little
really?
snap. Yeah, that little snapshot. I'm like,
Should have been here yesterday.
Mister, this ain't nothing. This is a 13, 14-year-old kid telling this guy that's been hunting for 25 years, this ain't nothing. They got that. I've been hunted in the Yukon.
Oh,
Went up
wow.
there hunting. Walking out, seeing wolf tracks in her wader tracks, walking into this little slough. Me and a buddy of mine from Tennessee went up there hunting.
That's unbelievable.
I've been to Alaska. I went to Alaska. Actually, it was when I got engaged to my wife.
No way.
Yeah. It was Christmas Day. I was leaving the next day to go to Alaska. And I asked her that night to marry me. And then I got on a plane. We flew up there with my buddy from Tennessee again. We flew up there and hunted king eiders. Stellars had just closed. Mm-hmm. And we had flock after flock. Stellars come right into the decoys. I had an emperor goose fly. Of course, it was on the endangered species list then. I had an emperor goose slide over me about 40 yards high, straight over the top. Killed her kings. The king was probably one of the best shots I ever made in my life. And then Gage, so when I was, we was talking earlier about steel shot and how bad it was. So when I was 15 years old, I bought an Ithaca Mag 10 gauge when I was 15 years old. And I remember I went into the old gun shop called Old English. It was in Ohio. I'm out there, go in there. Hey, how can I help you? I said, yeah, sir. I'm Fred Zink. And he goes, your dad, Fred Sr.? Yeah. I said, I want to order a gun from you. He goes, oh, yeah, what do you want? I said, well, I think a Mag 10 28-inch modified. He goes, what? He goes, how old are you? I said, I'm 15 years old. He said, how'd you get here? I said, well, my mom's sitting down in the car. He said, I'm going to need to talk to her.
15 years old.
Yeah, she had to come in and fill the paperwork out. I couldn't even fill the paperwork out, right? He said, you got the money? I said, yep. Pulled out cash, prepaid him for it. He put it on order, So I had that gun in Alaska with me. So I bought that gun. So do the math quick. I bought that gun in 85. I was 15 years old. Fast forward to, I believe it's about 92. I'm up there, and I'm out there on this point, and I see him coming, and it was two hens and a drake. And I didn't want to shoot a hen. You know what I mean? I wanted to shoot a drake. And they come, and the two hens were in front of the drake, and the drake was on the back side. And I followed it, and it was about 45, 50 yards. And I followed. And they got about 75 or 80. Now, that's when you could shoot. We were shooting lead, right? Yeah. I think it was lead, or it might have been steel in the lead. I can't remember in Alaska in 92 if you had whatever you shot. But they split, and that drake was exposed, and I made a shot. He was probably 80 yards.
Are you serious?
And I stoned him dead as a hammer at 80 yards on that 10 gauge.
No way.
I mean, probably one of the coolest. Of course, I was the only one there because my other buddy was on another point, and the guide was,
somewhere,
out, looking around. And
no way.
yeah, that was a cool experience, and that was night too. That was a great experience. Wow. And then I hunted in March. I hunted up in Newfoundland for eiders. On the migration back north, we hunted off icebergs, and I think that was about 93 or 94, something like that. And so those are great experiences, and I've been on some unbelievable. Actually, Matt Young, I seen we were talking about. I call it the hill of 10,000, but then more like 15. So we're in North Balfour, Saskatchewan, and Jim Alexander was on the hunt. Yeah. Matt Young. A couple of my camera guys, Chad Belding was on it. And Chad, we used to dig our blinds in. At that time, we always hunted out of finisher blind, or power hunters. So we wanted to be pink, like disappear, right? Yeah. So we'd always dig them down. So Chad, I said, start digging them holes. I almost had this rig. I get all done. I said, you got them holes done? He goes, not yet. I'm like, what are you talking about? I look down. He had dug some holes big enough you could hit your pickup truck in. I said, Chad, what are you doing? Like, this hole's like 3 feet deep. I said, it needs to be like a foot deep. What are you doing? He, oh, what? I go, dude, we got to get going. Like, they're going to start coming in. And so we finished up. I said, you got to go park the car. And so he had a rental car, and I think it was Jim Alexander's car. And he drove it over the hill, and I heard him get up. I'm like, oh, they're up, guys. Sit down. And we come up, and so for some reason, they all got up at one time, the entire roost. And we're up on this knob, and they were down in this river bottom. And they got up, they all come up at one time, and they come up, and they started landing. They filled the field full. They were landing in our decoys. It was probably, I called it, it was a video hunt. We call it the field of 10,000. It was like 15,000 lessers.
Are you serious?
And they landed. We didn't shoot. There was so many of them. We didn't even shoot. But it was one of the coolest experiences to have. 15,000 snow geese was laying on. Another really cool hunt was in the 80s. I met this fella. I can't even think of his name. It's been so long ago. He was a diehard duck hunter, had a boat blind out there. He said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? You want to go goose hunt with me in the afternoon? I was like, yeah, I never been. Yeah, sure. Snow goose hunting. I was like, yeah, I never do it. I said, you get decoys? No, we don't need no decoys. I'm like, what? He said, I'll pick you up. I'll take you out there. So we got there, and he had 2 pieces of burlap. I said, what are we doing? He said, just lay here. And he said, trust me, they're going to be here. And they landed. It was probably, I don't know, 15, 20,000 snows.
Dude, what?
And they come over and landed, and they landed all over the field. And we just laying there, and he goes, just don't move. I'll tell you when. And they fed right up onto us. Yeah, they were literally from here to the door. A wall of them. He goes,
pounded?
Yep. He said, all right, when I say when, go. And it was so loud, we could talk like we're talking.
Oh, yeah. And
they couldn't even hear us. They had no idea we're there. And we're laying there on a piece of burlap. And we set up, and it was just solid white. Yeah.
Man,
I think I was 14, 15 years old.
I bet
that was a really cool experience because the first time I'd ever really been that close to that many birds, no decoys, no nothing, right? Just straight up.
That's unbelievable. What would you say the scaredest you have ever been while chasing waterfowl?
We've been in some sketchy situations. There was a couple of times I should have been scared, but I was too dumb to be scared. We used to hunt Canada geese on frozen lakes.
Oh, boy.
And there was some sketchy stuff. Now, being a parent, I'd go with my dad, and, God love my dad, rest in peace, but he probably put us into some situations, him and my uncle, that we shouldn't have probably did. I just remember walking on the ice and just cracking behind you, right? And we're talking, it wasn't deep, but it was
deep enough.
Yeah, it was over your head deep.
Yeah.
8-10 feet. You fall in that water and you're done,
Oh, yeah.
So that, we hunted on, we did a video hunt called Divers of the Chesapeake. And we were out there and we were hunting some public water on the Chesapeake Bay, and I was with some guys that I know and trust that are watermen, right? And we had 2 boats, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "We'll be fine." We had rubber hammer. They had rubber hammers because when we got there, we'd have to stop and beat the ice off the boat so they wouldn't sink. I mean, it was probably 10 degrees, 0,
goodness.
And it was blowing like 30, 35. The Chesapeake gets chopped, gets rough.
Oh, yeah.
And literally got there, and the people faces were solid ice, and just like it was like we call it the deadliest catch season 13 type of deal. It was rough, and hunting was good. We had great hunts, but Looking back, I wasn't really scared because I knew the guys who I was with, and I grew up on the water as well, but I knew we were like right on the edge. One little problem.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about care flight. You're talking about you're going to make Sunday's news. You know what I mean?
No
So
doubt.
lots of them like that, right?
Yeah, like you said, almost too dumb to know you're in a situation.
Yeah.
Or too focused on a duck.
Testosterone and ego gets in the way of a lot of good decisions.
Well, now moving on, we know that you're passionate about calling. And we have a lot of listeners that call it ducks, that call it geese, that enjoy calling too. But one thing I want you to explain is, can you tell our listeners and our viewers how to go about choosing the right duck call? Because I think that is one thing that is misunderstood, because you have somebody that's just starting out, maybe goes up to somebody that's been around and be like, hey, what call are you blowing? Well, I'm blowing a cut down. And you don't need to start out with that.
No.
And so
you do not.
So can you explain to our listeners and viewers the best way to go about choosing the right duck call?
The best way to pick out a good duck call. Now, if this had been 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would have been a different story, because I will tell you, there were very few call makers 15, 20 years ago that made a call that was worth a flip.
Yeah.
They just simply, most of them didn't work. Today, with CNC technology and everything that's going on, I would say a majority of people's duck calls are pretty solid, to be honest with you. I would find a friend that you trust and know that's good at it, whether it be a friend, an uncle, cousin, somebody you play baseball with, whatever, that understands a good duck caller, and say, hey, what duck call you recommend? What do you got?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get started. And then have them tell you the proper way. Most important part would be not really the duck call you buy, but making sure you got the right instruction to go with. It's easy to learn how to blow a duck and a goose call if you have a good instructor right away. But after you do it for a year and a half, 2, 3, 4 years, the wrong or incorrect way,
tough to break that.
Bad habits are hard to break.
Yep.
So, a goose call or duck call, I love it when a dad calls me and goes, hey, I got a 12-year-old son, he wants to learn how to blow a call. Can you help him? I was like, yeah, bring him over, or yeah, I'll meet him at a show or whatever. Within 10, 15 minutes, I can have him going and doing it a lot of times better than his dad in some cases, because he don't have any preconceived ideas or bad habits. So find somebody you trust, somebody that's good, and buy a reputable national brand. I would not, unless you know the guy sounds really good and you're impressed with the calling, I wouldn't buy, it's not that they don't exist, but I would not buy a garage-built call. I would go with a reputable brand
that you know is legit.
Yep, 100%. If you buy that call, you're going to have a good duck call, right? So I would do that. And the same way with a goose call, I would do that, and then get somebody and get started off on the right, and take it slow and learn the basics.
Yeah.
Don't try to be a Jimbo Ronquist on the world stage the first year. Try to sound like a mallard duck, try to sound like a Canada goose.
And that's my next point, and you probably see it more than anybody. But a lot of duck hunters think that what they hear about on Instagram or TikTok of the World Championship, I'm going to try to learn how to blow like that, versus learning how to sound like a duck. Don't do that. So talk a little bit about how important it is to learn the basic call techniques, but also learning how to read a duck.
There's a lot to be said about what you just said.
That's a whole podcast episode in itself.
Oh man, you could talk about it. First of all, try to sound like the species that you're doing. Where you're turkey, learn how the turkey call, blow a Canada goose call, spec call, a duck call. Okay, try to mimic the exact sound of what they do. Being natural is very, very important. Okay, and not try to overcomplicate it. I call it being realistic and not have the human rhythm. A lot of people have a human rhythm. It's just like if you call me on the phone and we're buddies, as soon as I pick up the phone, you start talking, I know who you are.
Correct.
Because you have that certain tone of your voice, right? A good duck caller, you can't tell who it is because it just sounds like a duck, sounds like a goose. But a majority of callers, when they start calling, I say, oh, that's so-and-so. Oh, that's so-and-so. Because I not only competed, but I also judged.
Yeah.
And I could tell who was, I could be behind a curtain and be 40 callers, and the top 20, as soon as you started calling, I could write their name down because I knew who they were.
Yeah.
Some of it is because I've listened to them so much, but some of it is because they have a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
But is that rhythm a Canada goose, or is that rhythm a duck, or what is that, right? So we're not talking competitive calling here. We're talking about calling ducks and geese.
Correct.
Right. So the main thing is, number one, try to sound like the species. Don't try to sound like a human. Number two, spend some time out in the field listening to ducks and geese and what they do. And what you're going to find out is that people overcall, way overcall. Ducks and geese don't do that. The first thing that, hey man, here comes some ducks, here comes the geese. The first thing you do is they start blowing their duck call. Well, you not only do that, but blind next to you, and the group over there in that hole, and the group over there do that, and the group over there do that. Ducks and geese get conditioned to that, right? They get conditioned to all that because that's human noise, human rhythm, human thought process. But if you go there and you listen to mallard ducks, and I spend a lot of time out, and because I enjoy waterfowl. So I'm either, if I'm not hunting them, I'm watching them, I'm learning. I love the photograph. So I go out there and I spend hours photographing waterfowl and spend time in their environment. And it won't take you long. Gunner, like for instance, Gunner and I were in Oklahoma. We had 2,000 or 3,000 ducks on this little Willis Slough. We were videoing and photographing. We got done after the first night. I said, hey, do you notice anything? He goes, wow, Dad, they don't call a lot, do they? I go, no. I said, we make more noise for 4 dozen decoys in front of us. There's 4,000, and they ain't saying nothing, right? So I think the number one rule is just because you have a duck call, you don't need to blow it. If you do, you should have as pure duck sound as possible and pure duck sound rhythm, and then we'll get into reading ducks. So when you're early in the year, you can call at them on the corner. Okay, so if they're going away from you, you call at them on the corner. As they get a little bit, and you hit them with maybe a 3 to 5, 7 notes, right? Turn them. Well, that works good in October and November, but by December, that's what duck hunters do, right? So in December, when they are on the corner, I won't be saying no. That's all I'll do, right? And then people are like, wait. But they will react to that. And the reason why they react to it is because I always think about it this way. And this is I've used this analogy for 20 years trying to teach people. If to get people's attention with your stereo, say your stereo goes to 10 on the highest volume. If you got it on 10 and you're trying to get people's attention, you can't get it anymore, because it's already at 10. But if it's at 5 and you turn to 10, everybody in the room will stop and look at you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
There's a reaction. So if you're blowing your duck and goose call wide open, not only as far as volume, but as far as cadence and speed, and everybody in the blind is blowing at 10, and the ducks aren't reacting to that, you don't have a 12 to give them to get them to react, right? So Phil Robinson has said this for years, and I'm a student of the game. I listen when people that I respect, that know what they're doing, say something. I always listen. I might not agree, and sometimes, a lot of times I do agree, but sometimes I will test their thought process and their theory out. What Phil says, and he's spot on about this, and I use a lot. If a duck's flying to you, why would you blow your duck call? Is he going to fly faster to you? No. Okay. So why tell them your location? Why give them anything? They're already coming to you. If he circles once and you don't blow your duck call, great. If he circles twice and you don't blow your duck call, great. Right? He's interested. And so if I'll let a duck come in and circle me once or twice, and I will not even blow my duck call. I'll have my duck call to my mouth the whole time, but I might not say anything. Yeah. I'll let him circle down, come down, and when he gets downwind and he's at the right height to where I know he can finish, I'll hit him one time. Bang, 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 bang.
Show
bang.
us, roughly.
And boom, they come right in. But if you do that and say that duck or that Canada goose or speck is too high, and they can't finish because they're too high. Maybe the wind's blowing hard or not hard enough or whatever. And you look on the angle, it's like he can't get in. And you're just, at that point, you're just calling because you want to call.
Yeah.
You're not really trying to trick the duck.
Yeah.
And so if he's too high, I will not call because I don't want him to turn. Or some people times, and I'm not talking about hunting a public area where you have to turn the ducks quicker because you don't want them to go too far, but I'm talking about you don't have that many people around you, right?
Yeah.
So you want to let that duck slide. As they're sliding, they're lowering their altitude if they're wanting to work, right?
Yeah.
So if you turn the duck here, he turns, he's too high, so he circles. Every time a duck circles or goose circles, they're going to get smarter. If he circles 3 or 4 times, you ain't going to get them. So was that duck descending away, he's going away and descending. When he gets to the angle to which you know he can turn and come in, bang, and they turn and they come right in.
Show us on your call what let's say you got a, 1 or 2 pair just kind of coasting down.
Yep. So I like to, the 3 basic things that I'm going to typically do is I think the most underutilized sound when calling ducks is a quack. I think most people don't use it. But when I spend time in marsh, that's what I hear a lot of ducks doing. So I quack a lot. Okay. So I do that in a feed. Now, a lot of my feed is, okay, it's real subtle because all I am trying to emulate is a duck feeding, looking on the water. And when another duck gets too close to that duck, a scientist will tell you it's a spacing call. Turkeys, when they purr, an aggressive purr, a spacing call. When a Canada goose murmurs, that's a spacing call. When a mallard duck does what we call a feed call or a cut, that is a spacing call. It's, I am here, where are you? Okay? Because they're not looking around. They're looking at a piece of rice, a piece of corn, whatever. They're looking here. And they're saying, I'm here, where are you? And when another duck gets too close, it goes from no. That's
quicker.
Get out of my bubble, right? Because they don't want to share their food. And the same way with a Canada goose and a murmur, same way with a turkey with purring or whatever. It's a natural spacing call. So when you're doing a feed call and you're doing soft cuts and then you're ramping it up and soft cuts and ramping it up and soft cuts and ramping it up, what you're emulating is not only ducks feeding, but ducks finding food. Okay, so when ducks are aggressive and they're doing the sharp cuts or whatever, that means they're protecting something, and that something is food. And the ducks in the air, that's why they came there. They're looking for that as well. Yeah. Same way with geese, same way with turkeys, same way. You're creating aggression on the ground. But a lot of times when the ducks are coming to me, we'll just be doing feed calls on the water and soft quacks. We're not communicating to the ducks at all. We're not making a greeting call whatsoever. We act like they're not even there. We're feeding. We're ducks on the water feeding. And when they circle around, if they circle a couple times and they believe it, the most important part, if all this stuff we talked about, the most important thing I could tell you is read body language. Mm-hmm. And the body language on a duck, and the most important part on a duck or a Canada goose is when they get confused. And that confusion is they don't know whether they want to go on or land. And I always have my duck call to my mouth, and I'm watching the ducks. And as soon as I see any hesitation, and on Drake Mallard, as he's flying and he's got that head, as soon as he starts panning that head like that, that means he doesn't know, he's in a confused state. And as soon as I see that, and boom, they will walk and come right in. So reading the birds, and I spend so much time with the birds themselves in their natural environment that the one thing that I learned more than anything is 99% of the people call way too much. Not just a little bit, way too much. And it used to work, Matt, back in the day before people knew how to blow a duck or goose call. When I was a kid, you couldn't blow your goose call too much because nobody else could blow your goose call. You were like the only person. And so you could literally call the geese in. If you could see them, I remember in 1988, there was a drought in Ohio. And we hunted on a public area with a draw blind. And that year, and this, a lot of people say, he's crazy. But I don't remember a flock of Canada geese that I seen that year that I didn't call in.
That's unbelievable.
And I'm being dead serious when
I
I say
believe
that.
you.
Maybe there was 2 flocks, maybe there was 10, maybe
But
there was 2. But I don't think there was any. It's not that I was a master. It was just, could blow a goose call.
Yeah.
And the people in my area couldn't blow a goose call, like at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And now you got people that can.
But now everybody can. So that tool is nowhere near as effective as it used to be.
So it's almost reverse now. It's the ones that
I go reverse. People are like, hey, blow your goose call. They're coming. Like, no. This, let me do the calling.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? I said, trust me. I will say, traveling all over, I know there's other places like that, but the toughest Canada geese I've ever seen to call, right where I live.
Really?
Like if you blow your goose call too much,
they're gone.
Not happening. There's so much pressure in the area that, number one, you got to be able to see them move in daylight, because most of the time the honkers only fly at night after dark. But if they do fly, you got to be really careful with them. Now, when it gets cold and there's snow on the ground, different situation. But I'm talking about October, November, December. You better be careful.
You better know what you're doing.
Like, we just barely, and I do certain calls, but I read the geese, and so on a Canada goose, a quick little note on calling Canada geese for y'all out there that are Canada goose hunters. Keep in mind that Canada goose, the reason why they're calling is not a greeting call. It's always been, oh, here's a hail call, here's a greeting call, come on in. Do you think that Canada goose that flew off the roost and flew out to this cornfield, landed and found an ear of corn to survive is calling other Canada geese to come eat that ear of corn? No. He's protecting that ear of corn. He's protecting his family group. So it's mom and dad and the young of the year.
Yeah.
So that Canada goose, when he's on the ground, will typically not call it geese in the air until the geese in the air get about 50 to 60 yards.
Wow.
At all.
Yeah.
Now, they might be calling and clucking and murmuring and all that stuff, but they're not calling to geese in the air. Those geese on the ground will not start calling to geese in the air until them geese in the air are so close, and that Canada goose on the ground is telling them, do not land next to me. It is a verbal war back and forth.
Yeah.
And most people, as soon as they see the geese, they start calling.
Yeah.
And when they get to 50 yards, they quit calling because they don't want to mess it up. Oh,
And that's
hey, quiet down.
backwards.
They're coming. But real Canada geese do the opposite of that. They don't call at all when they're way off because they want them to go by.
Yeah. But once they know, hey, they're
coming, like, okay,
in.
now I got to start defending my food source and my family group of 3 or 4 or 5 young geese or whatever. So then they start getting aggressive, right? And that's how I call Canada geese. And I do the same thing with ducks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't try to call them in, Now, the difference is you're on a low pond, you got deep water, they're not feeding. In my opinion, at that point, ducks and geese like to communicate, like to mingle. It's a different scenario, but it's different sounds, different cadence, different aggressiveness. But when you're hunting over food, you're in a timber.
Yep.
They're eating acorns.
Yep.
You're in a marsh where they're eating a smartweed, where they're in there eating barnyard grass or smartweed or
call
millet
different
or
when
corn. That's an aggressive situation right now. So we hunt in Ohio. We hunt a lot of natural vegetation, and we hunt row crops. We hunt corn, barley, buckwheat, things like that. My ducks are coming there as like a big mature whitetail when he walks into the food plot. They're looking for the boogeyman, right? Because they know there's danger associated with that food plot, whether it be a waterfowl food plot, a deer food plot, whatever. They know there's danger there. And so you have to be really, really smart and stealthy with your hide, your camo, your decoy placement, and your calling. You have to mimic them exact as possible, because if not, they'll circle 2 or 3 times and
they know something.
They're gone. Can't overdo it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, but get a good call. Find someone that knows how to call to help you get on the right way. And then once you get a handle on it, go listen to live ducks, live specks, live honkers in the scenario that you're hunting, and listen to them, and they will tell you. They're the experts.
Exactly.
We just talk about it, but they're the experts.
The best thing, like you said, to do is just literally go and listen.
Yep.
Go find a
I always
refuge.
say decoy placement or whatever. I always tell people, they say, how you set your decoys? I said, what you see on Friday is what you do on Saturday. Because we could talk about decoy spreads, but if the temperature's different, if it's 65, I set my goose decoys one way. If it's 50, I set them another way. If it's 30, I set them another way. If it's 0, I set them another way. If the wind's blowing hard, I do this. If the wind ain't blowing, it changes, right?
Yeah.
There's no, did you do this every day? It works. No. So what you go out and see, get your good pair of binoculars. What you see on Friday is what you do Saturday.
Yeah.
let the live birds teach you.
Learn from the ones you're trying to hunt.
Learn from the pros. And I ain't no pro. I'm just an observer. Yeah.
Oh, me. Well, Fred, I can't thank you enough for taking time.
We appreciate the time
to hop
here.
on the DU podcast and give us all the wealth of knowledge that you have here in the past hour. We also want to thank our Ducks Limited podcast listeners for tuning in to the DU podcast. And also thank you so much to our podcast producer, Mr. Chris Isaac.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit ducks.org/DU podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.